Hey, how's it going, guys? Jackson here with Toasty DIY, and today we're going to be talking about the basics of pre-drilling or pilot holes, or really just a video about how to use a drill in general and how to create pilot holes, use the screws for them, exactly what screws to use on what material, and yeah, hopefully we'll learn a lot. So real quick, we're just going to go over what exactly we have here on this little table. This is really like the, I guess you would call it, all the essentials I could think of when it comes to using a drill or just getting screws into wood, metal, or concrete in general. So starting off, the tool to power all of this stuff is we have a drill here, and then we have an impact drill. Really the main difference is this one has little hammers inside of it essentially that use impact force. They basically smack what you're trying to do, kind of like what you hear mechanics working on whenever they're taking lug nuts off a car and you hear the da-da-da-da-da, that's a hammer drill or an impact. This right here is basically just your standard drill that has a chuck that's adjustable. I think this one goes up to 1/2 inch. They also come in like 3/8 and a few other sizes. This right here only takes 1/4 inch bits, so you know, basically what's in here or these guys here, that's a 1/4 inch bit. That's what we can use to basically work pretty much all of this. Now what we have here is a basic drill bit set. So this is almost like every size you'd want, and of course it's all in standard. Missing a few in here, but these are good for metal or wood. They'll work in either. They'll work in plastic and acrylic as well. Basically like anything that's just not concrete or super I guess you could say like really thick metal I wouldn't use them for, but pretty much any high-speed drill bit will work for metal. It's a very limited amount of uses typically if you don't use them properly. What we have here are basically the same thing. These are also drill bits that say they can be used in plastic or wood, but these actually have shanks on them that can do countersink. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Basically, it's the exact same thing as this, where it drills a pilot hole, but then it goes the extra step and drills a little larger hole so that the top of your screw head sits flush inside the material. These here are impact bits that are for concrete and masonry, so basically concrete, brick, marble, stuff like that. You can always tell a concrete bit based on the head. It will have like a little flange that sticks out from it. Those you have to use with a hammer drill, or you might even be able to use them with an impact, but I've only ever seen them used with hammer drills, but it does on the package say impact. So this drill is actually kind of cool because it has a hammer drill mode built into it, but obviously a real big beefy hammer drill works a lot better than you know, using this, but it does work pretty well, and we'll show an example. Now here is our, you know, basically all the screws for what we just talked about. So these are concrete screws or masonry screws. They'll work inside, outside. They're always blue typically, or sometimes gray, or sometimes they come in like bolt form too. But long story short, they'll say concrete on them or masonry. That's what these bits will be for. You cannot really drill into concrete with these, like just straight with them. You have to pre-drill first. Now all the other screws that we have here, you can pretty much drill straight into the material if you want to. Wood screws, I'm sure everybody's seen these, just basic sharp pointed screws. This right here is for sheet metal, or you know, a few other types of metals, but this is a self-tapping bit. That's why it almost has like a drill bit into it, and you don't need to pre-drill this. You technically could, but you do not need to at all. That's the whole point of it, is it's like a one-time use screw. Screws hold sheet metal together or whatever you want. These right here, basically the same exact thing. They're self-tapping as well, a lot bigger. These ones are actually used to hold, you know, not concrete, wood to metal, or you can technically go metal to wood, I believe, although you really wouldn't want to do that because it wouldn't be a very strong hold. But yeah, basically the same thing. I mean, you can tell just by looking at the ends on them that they're both self-tapping screws. They also have self-piercing screws, which basically look like these, and they can also be used in metal for like really thin sheet metal. But yeah, now that we've gone over the basics of that, I'll show you what exactly materials we're working with. So we have some basic wood right here. This is a 4x4, and then we have a like 1x6. We have some metal here. This is galvanized steel. This is aluminum. Doesn't really matter, you know, what you're doing. We're just showing you that you can drill into them and how to. And then we have a brick that has concrete over it, and that's the main reason why I got it, was because it had concrete over it. We're gonna be using this little bench here so that I can try to hold the camera while I drill. And yeah, let's just go ahead and go over some of the basics on how to do this. All right, so first up, we're gonna do the most easiest, most common material you're gonna be probably drilling, and that is wood. So we have some basic wood screws here. Honestly, with wood, you can really use almost any kind of screw if you really want to, but I always recommend using the one that's designed for the project. So these are just 1-inch screws. It's the length and the thickness and the thread type and everything's all just gonna depend on what exactly you're doing. But like I said, if you're just a very amateur at home, really almost anything will work that you can probably even find just sitting around the house. But we're gonna just use the impact to start, just to show you guys that you can drill straight into wood if you have a strong enough drill without any issues. So, all right, so I have the camera just set up on the wood so you're able to see it pretty well. We're using the impact drill right now, and you'll see why it's called an impact in just a second. So you see how we had that impact force. And really you don't need to go in this far, but I'm just showing you guys. You can hear the hammers going, and it really does help out with getting you know, screws in and out and bolts in and out. So you can see this is a pretty soft wood, and it's also very thick. So there's really not a super need to pre-drill this, because you can see we have minimal burrs up top. We did not split the wood. That's one of the main reasons you want to pre-drill, is you just don't want to split the wood. Now if we were drilling something a little bit thinner, like let's say this wood here, this is also pretty soft, so I really don't think we're gonna end up splitting it. A lot of times the wood that splits is the hard aged wood, but they're both treated lumber, so we really don't need to worry about splitting them. But that's one of the main reasons you would pre-drill. So real quick, we're gonna switch over to the drill that actually has a chuck over here. And so the chuck is basically, you know, fully adjustable. You can see it just allows you to put a bigger, smaller bit in there. And then we're gonna find one that's appropriate for the size of the screw. I really don't go by the book on this. So we're just gonna grab a screw, and I'll show you guys how I typically size them. So like this one here, for example, would be way too big because it's bigger than the screw. We want one that's smaller than the actual threads on the screw. So I'll just put these two side by side, and we can kind of compare. So you can kind of tell, although this camera really does not focus very well, but you can kind of tell that the bit that we've picked out is not too big. You'll know if it's too big because when you go to screw the screw in, if it suddenly just gets loose, you've gone too far. You've picked out a bit that's too big, or you've pulled out everything that the screw had to hold on to. So let's go ahead and show you guys a pre-drill. All right, so we're going right next to the other screw, and we're just gonna go ahead and do a pilot hole or a pre-drill. So with the drill bit, it's really easy to do a pre-drill. It happens very quick if you have a nice sharp drill bit or a new drill bit. But here's our pilot hole here, and this makes it a lot easier to screw in by hand as well. So if you're one of those people who you know, either don't want to switch drills, or maybe you have a specialty screw that has like a weird head on it that you don't have the bit for, you could go that route. But just watch how much easier this is going to be to screw this in. So look at that, we were able to get it all the way down without the you know, the impact even impacting. So it does make a difference, and if this was a thin piece of wood, like I said, this probably would have split it, or if it was like an older aged whatever, this screw would have split it because we forced it in there. This one would not have, more than likely, as long as you didn't go too far or anything. But you know, clean, flush, no burrs or anything. So next up, we're gonna go to one of these guys here. And like I said, this is a soft wood, so once again, it's not the greatest example of why you would need this, but this is basically for, especially if you have a screw that has a really large head on it, it leaves a pretty nasty hole a lot of the times, whether it's too deep or too far up, and it just, long story short, doesn't look good. So we're gonna go ahead and open these, and then I'll show you guys how those work. Okay, so this does have an adjustable depth on it with the hex wrench. We're not gonna worry about that because we have a really thick piece of wood. So we're gonna go next to these screws, and we're just gonna go ahead and do this. All right, so we got plenty of countersink there. Now, to show you guys the difference, you probably remember the hole before was just a hole, nothing else. Look at how we have a really nice spot to sit that screw in flush now. You might not notice the difference because, like I said, really soft wood here, and it's just, they're already sitting really nice and flush, but yeah, so I mean, you really can't tell much of a difference. And also, this really wasn't the right screw head to do it with. As you can tell, we kind of went a little bit over with it, but you know, in a lot of situations, having this Countersink really helps out a lot. And it was actually really easy to use. I like the shape of this bit too, how it's kind of pointed on the end. This is obviously really only for like a wood case. And it's basically like a screw that has steps to it. It actually gets a little bit larger as it goes. And that's the whole point of being able to change the depth of it, is you can basically change the size of the screw you're working with. But this would be like the ultimate use case to make sure you're not going to split or crack or do anything bad to your wood or plastic that you're drilling. These guys right here are going to work the best. So now we have wood to metal. This one's probably going to be a little bit rough for the camera, but metal to wood, this really is not the right size bit for this, but we're going to try to make it work. So as you can see, this this screw right here made this hole just fine. The only reason I didn't keep going was because I did not use anything to clamp this down. I'm using one hand, so it basically just started to spin on me. But yeah, you know, this will pre-drill your pilot hole for you. And then from there, this will basically pull itself the rest of the way in. Now we can basically do the same exact thing with this screw here, except this one's just meant for metal to metal contact, or to basically hold something down on top of sheet metal. But ideally you'd use this on some sheet metal and, you know, hold it to another piece of sheet metal. So yeah, you know, self-tapping and self-piercing are very straightforward. It's very easy to use. This one actually uses a hex head. This one uses a Phillips head. So let's go ahead and go to concrete now. All right, so here's another two-parter. We have our concrete screw right here, and then we have a concrete bit. This one's like way longer than we need, but you're gonna set your drill to hammer or use a hammer drill or an impact, as it said, which, like I said, I've never personally done. And then you're gonna find your point, you know, mark it, or even you could technically use a punch to get it started, but I've never needed to do that. So, all right, this one's pretty loud, so let's go ahead and do this. If you notice, I'm pulling this bit out every so often to pull some of the loose material we've gotten out. It'll make it a little easier for you to drill. All right, so we don't want to spend all day doing that, but we got pretty far in there. We actually drilled the hole out bigger than it needed to be as well. I did not have a 5/16 bit, so I think this one was slightly larger. So as you can see, this is not a clean fit, but ideally what you would want is to get your screw, you know, start at the top, and then it's going to take something like an impact most of the time, and then you're going to hear that once you're actually getting it in there. But as you can see, I'm kind of just making it drill itself at this point, but we got it most of the way in there. We could have kept going and gotten it further, obviously, but yeah, out of like wood and metal, concrete and masonry is definitely the one that you really can't just screw straight into, and you also really can't mess with the size. You really need the recommended size. And sorry about that, I'm actually grabbing this. So you can see it recommends 5/32, which, like I said, we did not have that. I think we had, I don't know, like 7/32 or something like that. So it was a little bit bigger, but yeah, long story short, you need to make sure that you get the exact concrete bit. A lot of times these come with the bits if you buy it from like a hardware store or online. All right, guys, so I think I pretty much covered all the basics that I could think of. If you can think of anything else, let me know in the comment section down below, or if you saw anything that you'd like to add to the video or any questions you have, feel free to leave those down below as well. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys in the next one.